Hey guys, welcome back to another Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. Today's game from the tabletop is called Filibuster by Playing Games. Filibuster is for 3 to 5 players, takes about 30 to 45 minutes to play, and it's for ages 10 and up. In the game Filibuster, you're doing exactly what you think you're going to be doing. You're going to be taking part in a filibuster. For those of you who don't know what that is, basically it's what happens in Congress when there's trying to get something passed through Congress, and people don't want it to pass, and so what they do is they get up on the floor and start talking and talking and talking and talking, and they'll discuss anything. It could be like their dog or their family or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just to buy time into which it won't get passed, or it prevents things from going forward because you don't like the specific bill going through. So you're, as a player, going to be going through a filibuster, and there's a certain amount of time in which you're going to need to be going through this filibuster. You're going to have this board here, which will indicate the amount of time it takes for each of the bills to pass, and depending on the round will determine how many hours the game is going to be playing through for those rounds. The more influence you get throughout the game, the better it is, and the most influence that the person has at the end of the game is going to be the winner. That's basically the idea of the game. Let me go ahead and show you what it looks like. So here's what's included in the game Filibuster. Now, first of all, there is the main board of the game, which is basically having a time chart as well as a clock. On the time chart, you're going to go across this thing, which will also give you the Senate Minority Leader influence based on how far it goes, as well as how much time it's going to be required in order to pass certain bills. These are all different bill cards, and there's 7 of them for each game, and the last 3 are going to have more influence on them than the last ones. As they go across, it's 5, 8, and then there's 12. Every player is going to start with 4 action cards over here, and they all do different things, as well as have the different amounts of values for the time/influence track over here. It's going to also include a time deck, which will determine how much time has passed or whether or not the filibuster has ended or not, as well as a bunch of influence token in the game. Included would be a die as well as a yes or no cards that will be included for the voting aspect of the game, as well as the box itself. Now that the game is set up, make sure every single person has 3 influence as well as their 4 cards to start with, and you're going to go ahead and determine who the Senate Minority Leader is. After you've done that, I think it is by whoever went to Washington, D.C. last, or if you roll a die, you can just determine it that way. Then you're going to flip over the first policy of the game, and there's different sides to the policy. There's if you pass it or if you fail it, as well as what it's called. Like this one's called Weaponized Penguin Research Program. And so basically the idea is you're going to have a Senate Minority Leader who is attempting to try and filibuster the policy. And you, as a group, are also trying to make sure it goes through because you're going to get influence based on what you give him in cards. And he's going to use those cards to pass the time as well as increase the amount of influence he's going to gain. If the bill gets filibustered, he's going to gain influence based on the time allowed, as well as whenever you give cards or play action cards, you're going to gain influence as well. After every single round, there's going to be a new Senate Minority Leader based on a bidding mechanism indicated by spending influence throughout. And as the policies go through and are either passed or failed, you're going to be able to gain more influence with the last policies. Not only that, but if you fail more policies than you pass, so if you fail 4 policies, the game ends and nobody wins. And if you succeed them, certain things will happen. For instance, this one is National Parks must contain roller coasters. Each player may draw 2 cards at the beginning of the next filibuster phase, so that's useful, right? And the negative ones have negative effects that could either affect everybody or help just the next Senate Minority Leader, and that will actually in turn make people not want to win. Either way, though, I know that sounds a little confusing. We're going to go ahead and show you the game and a couple turns of it. Okay, so here we have the game all laid out. Now, usually the first person to go, be the Senate Minority Leader, is going to be the player who last visited Washington, D.C., but we'll just go ahead and say it's this guy, so he's going to go ahead and go first. Now, over here we have this track, right, and it's going to start off on 6, and after every bill is passed, it will move on to more hours. If it fails, it doesn't move on. There's a total of 7 different rounds where the thing can go all the way up to 24 hours, but we're starting here. We got our 2 votes over here, and we're going to go ahead and flip over one of these time cards, as well as the bill to see what it is. Okay, so that one says Weaponized Penguin Research Program. And he's going to flip over his first time card. This could actually end the filibuster instantly or at the end of the turn or something, so just got to be aware of that. This one says time passes, no big deal. So we're going to go ahead and look at his hand. Now on his turn, he cannot draw any cards or anything as a Senate Minority Leader. He can only simply play a card. Now he's got blue and red, so he's going to choose to play a red card because blue is only used when you're actually playing as the helpers, right? The people that are not the Minority Leader. So +1. He'll move his track up by 1, and then he's going to end his turn. Now it's going to be this next player's turn. And on his turn, he can choose to do a couple things, but he's first going to draw a card. All right, so now he's got 3 red cards over here and 2 blue. And he's going to choose to do something. This one says Senate Minority Leader does not play a card from the time deck on the next round. That's great. So he'll play that card. Whenever you play a card as a star, it gives you +2. It just basically means +2 influence, so +2 points to win at the end of the game, which helps. However, he's not going to be passing a card, and that's something you can do for the Senate Minority, that you can actually give him cards. And when you would do that, if I would have given him a card instead, he would have actually gained this card to use for up here to move it to number 2, and I would have gained the influence required. But unfortunately, he didn't do that for the Senate Minority Leader, so it's now the Minority Leader's turn. Luckily, because of this card, he's not going to have to actually play a time card. But unfortunately, he can't draw a card, and he can't play any of these cards, so he's going to end up passing. Then it's going to go to the next player's turn over here, and he's going to draw a card. Ooh, look, we got a bunch of good stuff here. So we'll show you something good that he can do. So he can give this to the Senate Minority Leader, and when he chooses to do that, it's a +3. He will actually instantly gain 3, just like that. And on the Senate Minority Leader's turn, he's going to go ahead and flip over a time card, Daydreaming, nothing happens, and play this new one, which is +3. 1, 2, and 3 to 4. Now they need to get it to 6, and once that happens, they can pass it. So that's important to do. All right, now we're going to move on, and it's going to go back to his turn, and it just rinse and repeats like that. All right, he drew a card. He's going to, what's this one say? Senate Minority Leader may play a card immediately. Maybe I'll give him a +3. +3, awesome. So that is going to give this character over here, this player over here, 3 more influence. And on his turn, he can flip over another card, time passes, and play this +3. 1, 2, and 3. Now that means that he's past the 6 area, right? So he's going to get the, he's actually going to complete this filibuster as long as nothing bad happens. And that's really good. Now these players don't want him to continue to go any farther than the 6, because at the end, when this is done with, he's going to get all the points on this track. He'll gain actually 7 at this point if it stops here. All right, so this player is done. It's the next player's turn. He's going to draw a card. What is he going to do? I guess he'll give him a +1 because he doesn't want this guy to gain many more points. And that 1 will also give him a free 1 right here. That's good for this guy. He's going to go ahead and flip over his card. Bad press. End the filibuster after completing your turn. All right, well, that works out for everybody, I suppose. So +1 moves it to 8, and then he's going to end his turn right here. And so what happens is this thing at 8, it goes all the way back to 0, and he gains 8 influence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, just like that. And they've successfully completed it. So they flip this over just like this, or like this actually. And it says the Senate Minority Leader gains an additional 10 influence. Ooh, wow. That's really good. So I believe it's, actually it's the green one, I think. 10, 5, and 1s. And then they're going to start off with the next round. And the next round works fairly simple. You're going to determine who's Senate Minority Leader based on a bidding system. And you're going to bid around the table until everybody's done bidding or passes or can't bid anymore. So he could bid 1, and he could bid 2, and he could bid 3. And eventually somebody's going to conclude that they're, whoever has the most. But the thing is, what's interesting too is, so if this person bid 5 and this person bid 4, the person who bid 5 is going to win, and all of these end up going. So then he would be the new Senate Minority Leader. Now remember, Senate Minority Leaders can't draw cards, so you have to be careful when you want to do this. But after that happens, the next bill gets flipped over, and it tells you what it is, what happens when you pass and when you fail. And you set the next timer to 9. You take this deck over here and you shuffle it on up, just like this. Sometimes people are going to draw extra cards at the end of a round. Sometimes the Senate Minority Leaders are going to get extra cards. And then the play will continue. Now, usually you have to always have 4 cards, I believe, as the non-players. Everybody's going to have at least 4 cards to start the game with, for the round with. And you're going to keep going, either passing them or failing them. And as you go through it, when you get to these last ones over here, the person who wins Senate Minority Leader is actually going to get to take this influence here. It's free influence. So you can bid at least 5 and make it a free bid. And then it goes to 8 and so on and so forth. Like I said before, 4 of these fails, you lose. And if you don't get 4, if you only get 3 or less, then you determine who is the winner by the amount of influence they have at the end of the game. And that is the basic idea of how you play Filibuster by playing games. So like I was saying, that is the basic idea of how to play the game. There are a couple caveats I want to talk about. There's 4 ways the filibuster can end. First of all, it's drawing one of those cards like you saw in the example, ending the filibuster. Another way is if you exhaust this deck. Another way is if this track here gets to 24 points. In that case, then the Senate Minority Leader did a really good job. He gets all of the points, and it goes ahead and becomes a successful policy. Now, another way that's pretty interesting as well is the voting aspect in the game. Now, you can go ahead and call for a vote at any point in the rounds, but you can only do it twice a round, and you can only pass it twice per game. You can fail it as many times as you want. So what happens is the Senate Minority Leader is going to say, I'd like to vote on this passing, so let's go ahead and vote. You need the full majority to go ahead and pass it, and if it does pass, then you're going to get a successful bill. So the Senate Minority Leader is going to get half of the influence that he would normally get, and unfortunately, the successful effect that you could possibly get on the card of the policy is not going to be enacted, but it does count towards one of your successes. So that is an option to do throughout the game, but remember you're limited to 2. Also, there's a lot of action cards in the game. I wanted to go ahead and talk about a couple of them. They're really cool. Some of them actually will change the time deck, and it'll do different things. Look at the top 3 and put them back in any order. Every player can draw an additional action card, and all of these blue cards are going to give you influence and potentially just help yourself while seeming to help the Senate Minority Leader. A lot of the red ones range from 1 to 4 points, and they can give a lot of points. Even I think maybe 5 points, actually. And that'll help you go through these bills, because you need to have them pass at least 4 of them in order to successfully not lose the game as a group. But you want to have enough points where you're ahead of everybody else while still avoiding that. There's also a couple cards in here that will have everybody gain influence, and then you gain influence based off of the amount of cards the amount of influence everybody else gained. There's also some interesting time cards that will make this track over here. So let's say it was at 17, it would actually reduce the time by half, or increase the time by double, and that helps this Senate Minority Leader, and the other one hurts everybody. That's the basic idea of the game, though. There's a couple extra things, as well as there's going to be a yes and a no card when it comes to voting. They're going to include in the game. Like, this is a prototype copy, as well as more policy cards are going to be in the game. These are just the ones we have art for specifically. But all right, let me go ahead and tell you what I think about it. So Filibuster by Playing Games is definitely a political game. It's the first thing you think about when you see it. You got the red and the blue, the elephants and the donkeys, right? And it plays like it would a filibuster, which is really cool. If you've ever seen them online, they're probably not as fun to watch as playing this game. But the idea is you're going and watching this guy talk for hours and hours. And some of them are actually like talking for over almost a day or two. Like there's somebody who talked for a very, very long time. And it works very similar in theme for this game, where you're playing as a minority leader, trying to do everything you can to keep the policy from not going through by taking as much time as you can. The longer you spend filibustering, the more points you're going to get. And people do want you to successfully filibuster, but not at the cost of gaining so much influence where you're skyrocketing past them. Now, there are a couple things in the deck that are interesting as well as far as point values go. There are sometimes where if you fail these bills here, if they do not successfully do what you want to do with them, you're going to lose half your points and other crazy things like that. So you could be winning and instantly just drop down to nothing. So you have to be careful when you want to be that minority leader and when you don't. Originally, the first thought that came to my head was, why don't you always want to be that leader? Well, that's because you can't draw cards as a Senate Minority Leader, and that does affect gameplay. You want to draw as many cards as you possibly can because there's no hand limit to the game. And the more of these cards you have, the more of these red cards and action cards, the more control you actually have as to what you give away and what you keep and when you play it. And sometimes when you have a lot of cards, being the minority leader is a perfect opportunity to come in there, jump in, grab 24 points, and skyrocket past everybody. And you do have that chance of, even if you're losing the entire game, you can come right back. And I had it happen a couple times throughout the games we played. Very, very enjoyable game. The component quality is nice. This is mostly prototype stuff, and a lot of it's reused art. But there is some nice artwork in the game. There are some jokey things that are going on, obviously, that refer to different political things throughout the country right now. The proof is in the Putin, and then they got also different stuff. Like, they're just kind of funny. The commission study, is the Earth round? ? Right? So it does work. It's very funny, very enjoyable. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about the game because it really does work. If you're not into politics involving gaming politics, then you're probably not going to like this game because it does have some of those themes in it. But if you don't mind that, and you want a good quality game that has a lot of back and forth action, where it's almost a cooperative take that style game, this one really does that and really works well. And I was actually overly impressed with what I got when I played the game compared to what I thought was going to be coming after I first saw it. So a wonderful, wonderful job. The colors are great. The stylization is great. It flowed really well, played really well. I had a really, really good time with this game. I am happy to give my stamp of approval for Filibuster by Playing Games. So like I said, I had this dog, and he was a good dog. I mean, like, he did things for people, and he brought them papers and whatnot. He was a good doggy. He did a lot of good things for a lot of people. And yeah, I'll get to the policy in a second, but really, what I really want to talk about is my family tree and the heritage that I have from my native ancestors. I think it's a very interesting topic to go through and discuss all these very delicate intricacies of my past, because I think we all need to hear about this, involving the bill, of course. Very, very interconnected and entwined. So we're going to go ahead and go into that. So the first thing I want to say about that is my granddaddy. He was born in Mississippi a long time ago, growing lots of things